doing a specific sort of report card, you might assign a scoring system, right? So
Mm.
maybe 0 through 5, and 5 is the best score, and 0 is obviously a poor score. So, and create some sort of a checklist. Number one, did I follow?
Before we get rolling here, just a reminder to please like and share our videos. Your support helps us to continue to bring you the wonderful content that we share with you each and every week.
My market prep process? Score, if the answer is yes and you did a really good job, score it a 5. And then, did I read the market properly? Be fair and show some grace to yourself. Yeah, it was pretty good, but maybe not perfect. I had a little bit of a blind spot there, so I score that a 4. And then just go down your list. Maybe you got 5 things to tick off. Maybe it's 10. You don't want to make it too big because you don't want to make this an onerous process. And then you could take an average. Like through the day, I averaged a 4.5. That's awesome. And then over time, if you want to use the sort of data analytics approach, at the end of the week, what was your score? At the end of the month, what was your score? What's the trend of that daily report card score? So that's a way you can put some data around it. But back to sort of the qualitative parts of it, you also want to journal or add in your debrief. What was your mindset? Were you distracted? Is there something else going on in your life that was kind of tugging at you? And you have to be aware of that, because sometimes you need to be able to say, hey, you know what? Today's not a good day to trade. I'm not feeling well. I'm distracted over this issue. It's just not going to be a good day. You might also find yourself, you had a good read. You pick. You decided to get calls and you got the right strike. You're doing everything right, but you hesitated.
Right. Right.
Why?
Right. Hesitating.
Right. So and sometimes that's live journaling. You're like, I feel myself. I am bumping up against mental resistance. Why am I feeling this resistance? Resistance to action, right? Why am I hesitating? Write that stuff down, and then you can, we could talk about that, or there's other resources on the website about psychology, certainly, and talk about that hesitancy. Is it? I mean, John, this is your wheelhouse. There could be any number of
Sure.
things, right? Am I afraid of winning? Am I, putting too much emphasis on the money or the outcomes, whatever that may be? And then, if I do whatever you're doing in your trading that day, did you lash out at yourself? Did you berate yourself? Did you get, I missed that trade, you big dummy? You don't want to do that,
Right.
right? You want to show, something that John said years ago that really resonated with me. He's like, would you treat a friend that way? Would you call a friend a jackass when they had a bad day? Would you
Right.
beat a friend up like you're beating yourself up?
Mm-hmm.
No, you wouldn't do that. So treat yourself as a friend, right? I mean, you show that
Yeah.
grace. And so those are some of this market psych or the trader psychology components you want to include in your debrief. And it, it's going to be really customized for everyone. Create that kind of list and allow yourself to add and subtract and edit your report card as you go along. It will change as
Yeah.
you
You know
start
what?
to get better at it. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. I always just say, just start a process and then just see
Right.
where that process is weak and where
Right.
maybe you're doing things that don't benefit you, and you cut out what you don't need and you
Right.
add in what you do need. It's just a
Yeah. Don't perfectionism is inefficient, especially in trading. And I'm
right.
guilty as charged. I mean, John knows I'm always trying to cross the T's and dot the I's, and just take action. That's where John really shines. He doesn't wait till he has his plan 100%, whether he's, building a new house or putting together a trade plan. He gets a good idea and he's going to lean on his experience, but what he really does, he takes action. He gets into it. So take action with a daily report card, trade debrief, and then edit and mold it as you go along. But the most important part is take some level of action.
Hmm. Yeah, because if you take action, you can start to fix things. But if you don't
Yeah,
take action, you're always just wondering.
there you go.
Yeah.
There you
Yep.
go. So yeah, you just want to refine that process, take some action, get some sort of a process, and then refine it as you go along. And sometimes you'll throw some stuff out, and sometimes you'll add stuff to it. Yeah. And it's going to be, like I said, that these are going to be different depending on for me, my trading time frame. Like I have, like, just for instance, I gave you an idea of a framework of how to do a daily report card or a trade debrief for the zero DTE. But for my campaign trades, it's a little more simplified for me. Is, did I make the right read, appropriate read? Did I make good decisions? And then people know that I'm really digging in the back trader, and I'm doing different adjustments at different points in time and seeing during my campaign and seeing what the downstream effects are. And that's
Right.
basically my debrief. Like, what could have I done different? Not necessarily better to make a better profit, but what could I have done maybe to manage my risk better? Because I mean, I've had a lot of trades where I've had some nice wins, but I was in my debrief going, wow, you were really naked down there,
Right.
exposed to some risks that I wouldn't necessarily want to. Let's don't do that next time. So that's a little different debrief sort of
Yeah.
process.
Yeah, it's about looking at it objectively and keeping your thoughts about risk, reward, probabilities. Was this a reasonable move to make? Was it not a reasonable move to make?
Yeah.
And then, like Steven said, when you're in the context of the campaign trades, and one of the things we were pointing out when we were going through that other trade is I made this decision to roll the position back. And that looked like a bad decision at first, right? But it came back to basically save me had I ended up staying in the trade till the end, right? So,
Right.
uh, right. So when I'm debriefing that trade, and let's say I didn't roll it back and I lost it, I might be saying, well, I stayed in the trade too long, which is true. Um, in that case, probably because you had some, depending on how fast the down move was. But at the same context, you should also you should also pick up at the fact that, hey, had I rolled this position back a little bit early when the market was down and I was at near break even, that wouldn't have been a problem,
Yeah.
right? So just that awareness there is all good.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Karan, if you want to put something together, and then you'd like us to give comments on what your report card looks like, we could certainly do that too. Um, maybe start a template or something. So it's a really
Yeah.
good topic. And that's where the hard yards are put in, that's the work
Mm.
outside the market hours that,
And I've been
um,
through that, right? I've been through these
yeah,
detailed plans.
for
If
sure.
if if you were to ask me in 2010 about my bearish butterfly plan, I had a binder
Yeah.
because we didn't have electronic documents so much back then. But I had a
Yeah.
binder of 300 pages with my bearish
Yeah.
butterfly plan.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and then I would go through and debrief those plans manually whenever I went
Yeah.
through it, and it was a
Yeah.
lot. But I just don't need to. I mean, maybe I should be doing it, but for me, I just don't need to be doing that anymore
Right.
because
Right.
yeah, because
You've done it. Yeah.
I've done it and I know that, oh, wait a minute, I'm just going to stay in this concept. And so long as I stay in that concept, I'm doing well, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's something that just gets ingrained. It's like the martial arts movements. It's like you don't,
Think
some of
about it.
that is just,
Yeah.
starts to become natural. And sometimes you need to tune up,
Mm-hmm.
I do that too, and I'm like, wow, I'm really out of process here. I'm getting, and,
Right.
and that's just human nature, right? We tend to kind of
You
want to,
drift.
you
You drift.
drift. It's not like you're
Yeah.
doing it intentional, but you start to drift and you're like, okay, but it's so great to be able to have these frameworks, and these processes, that you can just pull them off the shelf. It's like rereading a book or a chapter in the book. Like, okay, let me get back on the horse here. But I do want to get at the comment that John made. I think it was earlier this year. Like, a lot of times we sort of strive, and I'm guilty of this, to make the best, most perfect adjustment in a given situation. And I think it was just during one of you were reviewing your trades. You're like, I'm not always going to make the most
Right.
this was a condor order roll back. Was that the most perfect thing and optimal thing to do? I don't know, but maybe not. I got a life to live. I could spend 45 minutes trying to determine that. And people know me, I'm screenshotting this potential adjustment, screenshot another one, and I compare them. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's good. But I have found myself an hour into some of that trying to pick the bet, and I'm like, I'm no further along than I was when I started. Pick something and go with it. And I think, John did a good job of pointing that out. It kind of goes back to that. Just take some action. This is a reasonable adjustment. Is this the most optimal, perfect thing that's going to give you the home run win? Maybe, maybe not. But you can't just expend so much energy trying to find that perfect adjustment each and every day. That's not to say that you want to put some rigor into it, some effort. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you can be lazy and just roll down the upper longs, right? Because that's in the
Right.
rule set. Evaluate some of these more advanced tactics, but also understand that you're not always going to make the most perfect move, and you're not going to know if you made the most proper move until the trade's over anyway, right? So don't
Right.
get too hung up on that. I say that for someone who gets hung up on that or has in the past a lot. Just over analyzing every single, well, what if I do order roll back? What if I take off some verticals? And what if and that's good to run through, but don't just go so nuts with it that you're not taking action.
Right. Exactly. Those are some really good points, my friend.
Yeah. Good questions. I think the topics that everybody's bringing forward are really the right ones, are really good. So hopefully we're providing some value there.
Yeah, yeah. I think if, like I said, if we can get people to do this, it's, one of the things that sometimes I get concerned about, especially with newer people, is they spend all this time trying to determine what the past results of this trade was, and
Yeah.
and all this other stuff. And it's like, don't waste your time doing that, because it really doesn't matter. Because once you're trading like a professional trader, you're not doing that anyway.
Right.
Our job in doing the go strategies is not to hope we win all the time. Our job is to start to understand the strategies, and then, again, put these layers in that we've been talking about, so that you can increase your win rate, increase your probabilities, increase, your overall profits.